I bought 250 racing games on Steam worth over $2,000. Some are obscure, some are forgotten, some are well known, and a few deserve better. Eyes on the road. This simple road safety advice perfectly applies to racing games as well. If you want to go fast without ending up in a wall, you have to be primarily focused on the road ahead. You instinctively look at where you want to go. You don't look at the car itself because you already know exactly where it is and where it's heading. The game's perspective tells you that. The camera follows the car in terms of both position and orientation. It doesn't matter whether you're using a chase cam but worse, hood cam where it should have been, or why did this become a thing? The camera always ends up at a fixed position attached to the car. It also rotates towards either where the car is pointing at or where it's actually headed. It's typical for games to loosen up this camera connection, sometimes too much, but there are some that break it entirely. Circuit Superstars, Csup for short, is one example. Not only does the camera not rotate at all, it's also not entirely bound to the car itself. If you look at the road ahead in Csup, you're gonna lose track of the car. If you look at the car instead, then you're not looking at where you're going. You have to constantly move your eyes back and forth between the car and the road. This adds a fundamental layer of counterintuitiveness that actively degrades your driving ability and can be a total deal breaker. Csup, however, has something else to offer. It's not in its cars or tracks. The road courses are almost flat, and they have to be, since depth perception is much weaker with this view. The car handling is full slide with a strong rear bias that's only amplified the faster you go. It's simple and forgiving, but not brain dead either. It puts the emphasis onto track mastery rather than car control. Beneath its family-friendly cartoon aesthetics, Csup is absolutely brutal, but also fair. This game is about door-to-door racing. The AI races cleanly near the optimal racing line, but they didn't lose control once forced off of it. They fight back. They won't let you hot lap your way to victory. They send it up your inside and relentlessly challenge you for the lead. If they see a gap, they go for it. They might push you, but they won't run you off the road. They're aggressive, but fair. They're not afraid of going 3 cars wide, they'll hold their line. Half the grid could end up cramped together, but none of them backs down. They're more planted than you, but not invincible either. A few will eventually get run off the road, but they'll immediately get back to racing right behind the rest. You can play dirty, but even that has its limits. Trying to push them off won't work everywhere, it'll just slow you down. Using them as brakes can work, but it'll also damage you. Too much damage and you'll lose power. You're better off simply racing clean and sending it when the opportunity arises. No game emphasizes attacking and defending the inside line like Csup does. Collisions are heavily dampened. If anything, you're encouraged to lightly nudge and rub against your opponents. After all, racing is rubbing, or something like that. Fuel and tire management is the most basic. In a few instances you can save a pit stop by lifting off earlier to save fuel. On easier difficulties, you can pit early to abuse the rubber band effect, but that won't work at higher difficulties. The hardest racing game ever isn't Midnight Club 2, and it's certainly not F-Zero GX. Csup isn't it either, but camera aside, it's both fair and highly challenging at the same time. And contrary to Dirt Rally, that's not achieved through car control on a narrow track. All you need here is consistency. It's worth noting that this game went through a lot of car balancing and AI changes, so most videos on it aren't up to date. The multiplayer is dead sadly, but servers are still up. It's cross-platform and works fine, but it's not the smoothest. Csup was initially published by Square Enix, who, I assume, did jack shit while taking a big cut. They got the game a Top Gear collab, which I can't possibly clown on enough. You pay $7 for a few obstacle courses that, while cool, don't provide more than half an hour of playtime. Its biggest highlight is the 3-wheeler, which drives a lot differently than everything else. They even paid 10 pro drivers to set times on the Top Gear test track and made some videos out of it. Except, the times in the videos don't match the ones in the game. Their explanation is that the video counted standing laps, while the game includes their fastest rolling lap. But why is Lando's standing lap faster than his rolling? It's either rigged, or the people they likely paid thousands of dollars didn't bother playing the game for 5 minutes.
29.445. Guaranteed the fastest lap you're ever gonna see on this game.
Damn it, Dodgitech, you still owe me that Lando meet and greet. I'm just messing around, obviously. Literally no one cares about this DLC, and you can't even get it anymore. The time attack one was free at least, but still, I think I'd get more value out of Bathwater than some rich kids' hot lap ghosts. Csup creators eventually took publishing rights back from Square Enix, only to partner up with the most elitist racing game publisher to make iRacing Arcade, a racing game that classifies itself by an arbitrary camera restriction. iRacing itself limits you to cockpit cam only. The reason I call it hood cam but worse is because of visibility, but they don't care. They expect you to already be running some expensive triple monitor or VR setup. Elephant in the room aside, what's new in iArcade coming from Csup? Not a whole lot. Everything from core gameplay down to the AI driver names is recycled. We got new licensed tracks, Hold on a minute. Why would you license cars and tracks if you're gonna design them like rip-offs anyway? You've seen games dodge licensing fees by simply removing the branding, so what's different here? My guess would be product placement. The brands add absolutely zero value to this game, yet are somehow showcased as a main selling point. The tracks contain a lot of change in elevation now, which causes problems. Csup physics weren't designed with huge hills in mind. Even with the added rear bias, they suddenly snap loose. But iArcade's main addition is a new career. Or at least, that's what it seems like. Csup career only consisted of simple Grand Prix. With iArcade, however, you also get to build and manage your own racing team. Let's take a look at that. You can now build a small city using roads and various buildings. It's simplistic and only serves as decoration, though some buildings provide various perks. One of them enables you to hire drivers, adding a new race manager aspect. Without the manager part, because all you need to do is mindlessly press some buttons and that's it. You can now progress through the game and make money without racing yourself. If you really want to push it, 4! That's how many races you have to do yourself before turning this into a clicker game. You can then spend your constant stream of income on toilets. This is a thing you can place in your city. In fact, who needs a city at all when you can fill the entire land with about 15,000 toilets? This is iRecycling Arcade at its peak. The total lack of any balancing only becomes more apparent with a new perk system. You can now generate and equip perks that can be summarized as doping, cheating, and bribery. That makes this game more realistic than iRacing itself. These perks are completely broken and overpowered. You can have so much power that the car wheel spins for most of the track, or have so much grip you roll over from turning too hard. They once again push the physics to where it wasn't supposed to go. And that's what iRecycling's nearly 2 years of development resulted into. A bunch of gimmicks that don't even work properly. A simple speedometer would have been a bigger addition, but at least the core Csup gameplay remains intact, right? The best part of Csup, the AI, has taken a huge hit. They now straight up ram you off the road, get penalized in mass for not following track limits, and sometimes struggle to stay on the track in a pack of 2. There are half as many cars with even less handling variety, controls are no longer remappable, and ranked matchmaking is removed. Let me clarify, a company known for ranked racing, partnering up with a game that already had it, makes a game that doesn't even have public multiplayer. Coming from Csup, iRecycling is a complete downgrade and a letdown. But that's the thing, Csup's marketing was so bad, not a lot of people played it. And marketing is about the only thing iRacing excels at. iRecycling has one other huge advantage, the camera. No matter how flawed it is, the camera alone is enough to sway people away from Csup. Well, not anymore. About 5 years after Csup's release, we finally have a camera mod. The options are limited as of writing, but regardless, this is a camera that follows the car and rotates with it. This immediately improves the driving experience. The hardest difficulty is still a challenge, but one that no longer makes you question game design decisions. Or actually, it might. This camera fits the game so well, you might wonder why it wasn't available by default. Well, looking at the game alone, you can tell they cared a lot about presentation. The devs basically said that a closer camera would have made the game look less detailed. Yeah, who needs playability when you can make the game look better? Them Vibe drivers can't complain about the number of grass blades if they're not close enough to count them in the first place. This isn't FH6 or some truck sim. Your eyes are already working overtime in Csup. You don't get to admire the leaves on the copy-paste trees placed out of bounds. If you're playing this, you're racing. And if you're racing, eyes on the fucking road. Crash Drive 3, I didn't buy the first two, is a multiplayer first game. Even the tutorial takes place in online crossplay lobbies of up to 12 players. There are 5 maps in total, and to unlock them, you have to find 8 rings in the previous map and pay an entry fee. You'll earn that by taking part in 10 different multiplayer minigames. Let's go over them briefly. King of the Hill is a weight measuring contest. Stay in a stationary ring to gain the most points. Beach Ball requires you to hit the ball as hard as possible to get points. If it's on the ground, you better have the tallest car. If it's in the air, you can try to rocket league your way into it. But the boost isn't that strong, and you can only control pitch and yaw while in air. Race is a race with checkpoints, and King you have to hold the crown as long as possible and don't let others steal it by tagging your car, while also hoping that the guy farming money out of fans doesn't get it first. Cops and robbers is in fiction. Robbers collect gold bars for points, while cops try to tag them to force a team swap. In collection you have to drive over coins across the map and hope you come across more gold coins than others. Find the ring is a waste of time. There's a stunt mode. It's the usual find the meta combo and exploit it over and over, but there's a much more balanced variation of it, where you have to tag objects by stunting over them, and the person with the most tags wins. You can steal tags from other players, but you have to score more than them while stunting on that object. And that was every game mode. Quite the mixed bag, but fun loop overall. The best and worst part about it is that these minigames start automatically. There's no wasting time in the pause menu. If you run the map, you can choose to take part if you want to, but some people don't, which means you'll have lobbies where no one is actually playing the game mode. The more people you beat, the more money you make, and the more cars you can buy. The cars are mostly about size and acceleration, with little difference in handling. They're all fully grippy, with handbrake triggering a separate drift state. Reverse driving is also totally viable. Eventually, you'll unlock tanks, which introduces a sumo game mode. The tank always shoots straight, so you have to rotate it in order to aim, while staying mobile enough to avoid becoming a sitting duck. The shells are instant and only apply force. Hit someone hard enough and they'll fall off the platforms, netting you points. On smaller maps, this mode can get chaotic, with tanks flying all over the place. The lack of a crosshair and stable camera is evident. It was a surprisingly enjoyable mode regardless, like the rest of the game. It's free on mobile but comes with microtransactions. On other platforms it regularly goes on sale for a few dollars. It's worth it, when there are enough players. My hostage even shared his save file if you want to skip the grind. Island Racer crashes on startup. The demo version is fine though, lets you race for 2 minutes before asking you to get scammed again, featuring a relatively rear biased full drift handling that becomes too twitchy at high speeds. There's no gamepad support, and the mouse steering is useless since, as usual, it doesn't auto-center. The driving can be enjoyable at lower speeds, but the tracks are mostly high speed based. There's even a random track generator and multiplayer that actually works in the demo version, but only with a VPN for some reason, and after many retries. There's only one V1s, and the head-on crashes, which has become a ritual at this point, was less than satisfactory. The cars are too grounded for it. It's a 2009 game, not even running at full resolution, and still drops to 5 FPS. Interstate Drifter, a game recommended by a regular viewer, otherwise I tend to avoid 2D games. You can only travel in 4 directions in this one. The cars slide before fully changing direction, and that is everything there is about the driving. It seems to be open world and got exploration, but I have no idea what to do, and there are no guides. It was at this point that I realized the game's still in early access. I fucking hate early access, or at least the way it's typically done, so instead of wasting time in an unfinished build, I tried a free prequel. It's quite short, you travel between different maps to race and beat rivals. Still didn't like it, retro slop out of 10. Sorry Marino. Race and destroy. You race, race again, and die. That's it. There are only 2 tracks and an arena where you take damage simply by being in the proximity of other cars. Good thing the game doesn't care about your finishing position, you're once again a winner. There's illegal Nitro that feels like it does nothing, yet another 4th horse tank, and a slow-mo power-up for some reason. The speedometer is clearly in metric, but has a miles per hour suffix. The people you're trying to fool don't know what a kilometer is anyway, even Fortnite figured this out. Even this mess of an asset flop has self-centering for the steering, which means that this game is still better than Project Motor Racing. Nitro Rage, multiplayer only, crashes every few minutes. Kart Racer, with a C, jump into the cart, roll downhill, and use the ramps to launch into the objectives. It's a game that's relying on its jank and memes, but it's not having any effect on me. There are only 4 environments, each with 3 levels, so you can finish the game in one sitting. And you better, cause there's no save function. 78% positive ratings, but of course the reviews are trolling just as much as the game. Or maybe they liked the nude model in the second level, which is actually briefly visible in the Steam trailer, and they got away with it for 8 years. Drift Challenge. Let's start a career. Yeah. Despite the name, there is no challenge here. The career levels require you to do a bunch of tricks or reach a certain amount of drift points. The thing is, as long as you're wheel spinning, you're getting drift points. The multiplier is tied to distance, but once you max it out, there's no reason not to sit still and hold 2 buttons. The other objectives are far better. Better than the overhyped weeb bait that is JDM Master, that's for sure. Drift while passing gates and checkpoints, through zones, around circles, doing jump drifts, and donuts. Still, it's not until the last third of the career where the courses get a bit more interesting. We're not dealing with a full drift handling this time. The cars are still incredibly drifty, but that's not achieved by only lowering the tires' sideways friction like we've seen with every other game so far. This one's a more traditional car system and comes with 3 slightly different physics variants. Throttle control makes a difference this time, and you're given plenty of options for the input system. Things that should be standard in every racing game but aren't. The default chase cam is unusable, but this is another area where the game offers some should have been standard customizability. You can adjust the distance, height, and how fast you want it to follow the car or its trajectory. No FOV though. The career is easy to get 3 stars on, until you get stuck on this level. It's an oval with 3 laps that each require you to perform a jump drift. But here's the thing, the ramp is way too small. No matter the speed, you cannot gain enough air for the game to register a jump drift. Everyone got stuck on this level, and I know that because there's a global leaderboard for total career points, and I was already at first place at this point. Fortunately, the game also has setup tuning, and it offers more freedom than it probably should. Using some extreme settings to make the car bouncier, I managed to extract more air out of the ramp and finally trigger a jump drift, but it wasn't consistent at all. After a while, the game crashed, and took my garage with it. But the career was saved somehow, so I bought a truck, applied bouncy castle tuning, and that did it. The rest of the missions were cleared easily shortly afterwards. So that was it. The biggest challenge in Drift Challenge was gaining air in a truck. And yes, the cars are all rear-wheel drive and handle identically. Other modes are basically just different maps. The multiplayer is incredibly laggy, even more so than usual. And of course, the only value came from trying to crash head-on. Well, in this case, we could also clip into each other and merge our cars into one. Drift Challenge was a weird one. It gets something so right and others so wrong. Next, an online-only single-player drift game with servers shut down. Self-explanatory. RC Death Race multiplayer. Miniaturized car models thrown on tracks that are nothing but 90-degree corners. The gameplay might as well be barrow. The mounted gun doesn't seem to have any effect. If anything, the low force it applies speeds up the opponents. We also have the most overpowered shortcuts in racing game history. Now, how do we die in RC Death Race? Well, the mine drops your battery. The cars can reach 100 kph on full charge, but as the battery drains, the power also drops, and once it's empty, it keeps dropping still. You can camp over a mine power-up, plant it, and go in reverse to damage your own battery. After a while, I managed to drop the top speed to 1 kph. We've now achieved true barrowism. Redline Racing Erlas. Steph sent me a key in 23 asking for feedback. It's somewhat of a Gymkhana game, with obstacles that, even after reading through their instruction, are confusing to navigate. Slow steering, locked graphics with poor performance, and unremappable controls. The 23 me reached back, but it shouldn't have. The game isn't salvageable. It's been abandoned for 2 years now, and likely for the better. The best part about it is its top review. Can't argue with the current cost. Was given a free key. 100,000 Instagram followers, by the way. Blockland seems like a Minecraft ripoff, but it has something big that Minecraft doesn't. Vehicles that are practically undrivable. For some reason, the steering takes longer to center than it does to turn. Worse yet, it won't auto-center if you're not holding gas or brake pedals. I'd say pedals, but it's more like a singular lever. The car takes like 2 seconds to slow down after you press brake. All this would make any racing game frustrating and unintuitive, regardless of the physics. In this case, they're only making things worse. We hopped into one of the few remaining multiplayer servers and found that every track was ridiculously wide. The networking couldn't be any worse. Being at the proximity of any player would usually result in something catastrophic. There are plenty of old racing games on Steam, and most of them are a nightmare to run on modern systems. Publishers rarely include any patches, even ones that are simple drag and drops, but whatever. Have a nice day. It seems to be 3D based, but corners pull the car towards the inside like those 1.5D runners. There are settings like centering and centrifugal force that can be toggled but have seemingly no effect. And unfortunately, the game is too obscure to have much info available. As a result, it's gonna feel like the game's repeating the same 3 corners over and over again. Driving isn't the only thing though. We got weapons that I ended up not using much at first because I was hot lapping in front. Then I realized I was on the easiest difficulty, so I chose the hardest and rubber band kicks in. The AI is glacially slow in certain track sections and comically fast in others. No autolock or noob tube pickups here, which would have made weapon management a welcome addition if the AI didn't cheat so blatantly. You're better off with the cockpit cam since Stage is too slow. It actually comes with a radar. Yes, even this game is better than Project Motor Racing. The main problem is that my game at least tends to crash right after the races, right before the save menu. I gave up after the 4th crash and after realizing that the game was going to make me run the same 12 tracks just with a different car. Admittedly, I half-assed this game despite liking a few aspects. However, it pales in comparison to a franchise that came before it. You like Carmageddon cause you're nostalgic, I like Carmageddon cause I'm a racist. We are not the same. In fact, the Carmageddon you likely played wasn't as good as mine. Karma's driving is known to be unpleasant, which is true if you're using default controls. The game applies an unresponsive and restrictive steering filter. It won't allow you to take full advantage of the car and is too slow to catch slides. It'll turn the cars into boats that uncontrollably spin out. If you use a joystick, however, the game removes this filter and gives you raw input. You can now easily save the car from spinning and steer as hard or as shallow as you want. Even then, the cars can be too sluggish. That's because, when using throttle, the game prevents you from applying full power in order to keep the rear wheels from spinning. For that, there is a dedicated wheel spin button that lets you induce oversteer on demand, rotating the car as much as you want. Combined with raw input, this gives you complete control over sliding. You can even drift up to an extent, a feat nearly impossible with default controls. No fake drifting, no instant grip fade, just pure car control. Just another reminder that this isn't about realism, it's about complexity and details. You wouldn't expect to find one of the best pre-Gran Turismo driving experiences in a game supposedly about something else. Karma is known for its controversies. a double-edged sword that popularized the game and misrepresented it at the same time. Karma is a lot more than running over people. Racing, combat, and exploration are its three main pillars. The first way to win in Karma is by simply racing through all checkpoints. The layouts are underwhelming, with too many copy-paste 90-degree corners. The surfaces have more variety, they can be as slippery as ice or as grippy as carpets? It's only in this Splat Pack expansion where you see some interesting courses. You'll notice that there's no position indicator, because it doesn't matter. It's not like the AI can drive on anything but a straight line anyway. They crash all the time and teleport when you're not looking. Even though you only have to complete the course, you won't have the time to do so. You're racing against the countdown, and one way to increase it is through combat. The second way to finish the race is by wrecking all opponents. You gain time based on damage dealt. Mechanical damage is basic, engine and wheels can degrade. For visual, we probably have the first instance of actual body deformation. It's not a good one, but it won't matter, because not only collisions are heavily biased in your favor, but repairs can be done at any time with a button press. You can't even die. This is the easiest way to finish the race. However, it might still not be enough, because to progress, you have to earn a certain amount of income in the race in order to rank up. Simply wrecking isn't profitable enough depending on the difficulty. For that, we need to explore. The third way to clear a level in Karma is by committing genocide. This is the most time consuming, you probably won't bother, because the maps are huge and you'll find pedestrians in every corner. There's a lot more to the map than just a race course. My race aspirin can't tell if there's some environmental storytelling going on, I'll leave that to the vibe drivers. Organics aside, barrel pickups can also contain time and money. Some of them temporarily modify elements such as power, weight, grip, suspension, gravity, and drugs. You have total freedom over which way to finish the race. Karma is essentially a sandbox, but one with structure and clear goals. On max difficulty, you probably want to engage in all three aspects. Or two in late game, where the lap count nears double digits, you've earned so many armor upgrades that you barely take any damage, and have so much power that low-end acceleration is limited only by traction. As with driving, car variety is another overlooked strength of Karma, though the random chance involved in acquiring them is to blame. There are only 10 standard vehicles in the base game. Despite them all being rear-wheel drive, each has unique handling traits and serve a different purpose. We can put them into 5 categories. The balance cars, like the one you start with, these are average all round. Then there are glass cannons. The buggy is the lightest car with high acceleration and downforce, but is also the most fragile and snap oversteery. The dragster is only good in a straight line. Its low suspension can't take simple bumps and heavily impacts off-road acceleration. Changes in elevation is where many driving models show their true colors. Karma's isn't amazing, and its low detail roads aren't helping, but it absolutely destroys its competition at the time. We've seen how bad the likes of Roll Cage and Revolt were. Some games simply glue the car to the ground, rendering bumps pointless. Karma isn't one of them. The suspension setup plays a big role. To best tackle off-road, we have the monster truck class. There are 2, and another one from Splat Pack that's so massive, it won't fit through some base game tracks. It also occupies most of the screen. Thankfully we can adjust the camera height. What we can't do is look back. The orbit cam is practically useless with how slow it is. Your best bet for combat is switching back and forth between chase and cockpit cam. The monster trucks hit hard, but for late game, you'd want something from the tank class, like a tow truck, which is one of the few cars where steering beyond a certain point causes reduced steering. Then there's a bulldozer that's incredibly soft and top heavy, and finally an actual tank that appears as some sort of optional boss fight late into the game. In the final category there is just a pimpmobile. It's quite stable despite being low and soft. It's fast, the rear hardly breaks loose, and the front bumper gets a damage modifier. There are more cars driven by the opponents that are only unlocked as cheats at the end of the game. Most are reskins of the standard cars, and the ones in Splat Pack are poorly configured. Being an old PC game, the biggest roadblock with Karma is getting it to run in the first place. A decompilation project is in the works, but until then, I found Melt Pack to be the most complete package. It combines the content of base game and its Splat Pack expansion, runs out of the box, can be upscaled, and properly recognizes controllers. On the downside, it crashes randomly. Karma would continue in Karma 2. Combat receives the most changes, grid size has increased, and there's a fixed chase cam option. Still no look back button though. You can now die if you get hit too hard and even get split in half. Visual damage has seen huge upgrades. Cars now come with shatterable, flappable, and detachable parts, and deformation has been improved. Land on both bumpers, the car turns into a banana. Crash too hard, it turns into a hunk of metal. Get crushed by a platform, it turns into paper. It took a much more popular franchise 9 more years to figure this out. Mechanical damage on the other hand has remained the same and carries over the same inconsistencies. It's just easier to spot now because the game shows the health of your opponent's critical parts. Hit a loader at 200 kph, no damage. Reverse into it, he almost dies. Blast him with explosives, he's immune to it. We have the addition of power-ups such as Mines, Mowders, Jump, and Karma's version of Noob Tube. While the default steering is faster this time around, it still suffers the same fundamental issues as Karma 1. If I had $1 for every racing game ruined by a neglected input translation layer, I'd be able to afford Screamer. The driving is identical to Karma 1. Pimpmobile has become the Driftmobile, thanks to higher steering angle. Buggy is now Pimpmuggy, combining incredible suspension travel with a stable rear. Karma 2 has more cars with an even wider spectrum of handling divergence, which also brings out more weird quirks out of the physics. More cars exhibit understeer behavior when you over-rotate the wheel. Push it even further, and some of them start crab drifting. Conversely, too much steering on certain cars will instead pivot the rear towards the opposite direction. This was most visible on the dragster in Karma 1. In Karma 2, the same car has an extreme rear grip bias as you'd expect it to. Weight transfer doesn't affect traction, but it will result in body roll that big, high vehicles can take advantage of to get over some obstacles. Pedestrians are now 3D and have more modifier pickups dedicated to them. They're supposed to be funny, but turn into a gimmick after a few uses. Maps contain a lot more destructible props, some of which are moving, while others are simply annoying. The maps are more dense in general, until you get to the second half of the campaign where they take a huge nosedive in quality and become much emptier. I won't go over every small change and detail. Karma 2 isn't as well regarded as the first game, but it's an overall upgrade. It's even got the biggest mod catalog out of all 3 games. One of them transforms it into Wreckfest 3. It took Karma over a decade to come back as Reincarnation, a game mainly criticized for bugs and poor performance. It was replaced a year later by Max Damage, which is an updated re-release. The classic Karma mod returns with a few changes. You're no longer the strongest car on the grid. If anything, you're the most fragile. You can respawn if you die, but you lose a lot of credits that you need in order to progress. Out of all Karmas, this one encourages survival the most, and that becomes even more true in the new game modes. We have regular racing with a twist that you can steal laps from opponents by wrecking them. There's a checkpoint chase mode where the first person to reach a designated location gets a point. These locations are randomly chosen around a small area on the map, making scoring dependent on a dice roll more than anything else. It's only thanks to point stealing that this mode gets some value. There's a tag mode where you have to remain the tagged person as long as possible, and finally there's regular derbies. It doesn't count damage dealt, which means, as with most derby games, putting down the last hit on wounded opponents is all that matters. Even worse, the game fails to credit the correct person sometimes. We have an entirely new vehicle system that comes with various ups and downs. I can't tell if there's a difference between ice and asphalt. All cars are now 4-wheel drive with lenient tires that promote a rally-style driving. What doesn't is the slow steering rate, which is made worse by a misconfigured self-centering behavior. The steering wheel aggressively pushes to the opposite lock when the cars are about to slide, but not when they actually start sliding. It works the opposite way you'd expect. Same behavior steers the car downwards on bankings or even small bumps if you take them sideways. In older Karmas you just use raw input, but here there's no support. The controller isn't even remappable and misses the wheel spin binding that exists on keyboard. There's finally an orbit cam, except it's relative to the camera that follows the car instead of the car itself. As weak as brakes were in older Karmas, they can now result in reverse wheelies. Speaking of which, you no longer need to perform to go over obstacles. The monster trucks can easily climb over rocks. Cars are now put in heavyweight, all-round, and racer categories. Wait, what's the Pimpmobile doing in racers? That thing's 2 tons. Even so, that's not much against the peds and props, which are much heavier now. Sometimes they get pulled underneath and lift the car, sometimes they get stuck and weighed down, and sometimes they scream. The big rig is laughably agile. There's a jet car with a jet that sadly doesn't work midair, and front wheels are different sizes for some reason. We got a Merc with tank tread physics. In Karma 1 they simply use invisible tires. Spike wheels aren't cosmetic anymore, they actually cut other cars' wheels out. Not only do the tires deflate, but they can entirely come off the rim. Wreckfest 2's flexing this as serious new tech now. This game could have easily rivaled the first Wreckfest. Not that game was anywhere close to popular, but at least it maintained a consistent player base that filled a few online lobbies. Karma on the other hand is completely dead. So how's the multiplayer? With all the props, power-ups and complex damage, you'd expect it to be a laggy mess. But it was anything but. A few timeouts aside, the multiplayer experience was shockingly smooth. From head-on collisions to door-to-door racing, none of us could recall a single desync instance. As a compromise, inputs are delayed by 1 server frame, a similar approach as Wreckfest 1, which, along with Max Damage, remains the most stable multiplayer racing experience. Given how racing games aren't as reaction time heavy as people make them out to be, this seems to be the most balanced approach. As good as race and tag modes were in the campaign, they became even better in multiplayer. Your opponents can finally dodge and outrace you. Even the checkpoint and derby modes were improved, but they relied heavily on wrecks. The existence of repair means you have to hit hard and fast in order to secure a wreck, and for that you need power-ups. Some require actual skill, like projectiles that need timing and aiming, while others were noob tubes that yanked everyone around you with a button press. One of these was only fun for the person firing them. The lack of game settings only became more apparent over time. You can disable power-ups entirely, but that makes tricks unlikely since you can still repair. There's nothing to adjust the damage intensity and set specific power-ups. A delay or rate limit on repair would have also helped. Most Wreckfest lobbies turn down the damage because it's neither fun or fair to drive a badly damaged car throughout most of the race. Now in Karma, you barely get to drive a damaged car before it's fully repaired. Freedom has always been a big part of Karma, but when it comes to multiplayer settings, your hands are tied. For that, we can turn to mods. Karma's freedom has always extended to modding, but it'd be 4 years until the mod-friendly version of Max Damage became available to the public. This paved the way for mods such as Overhaul, and Screaming Sheep replacing every sound. The Overhaul mod is known as a definitive upgrade, but that's not entirely true, because along with improvements, it also comes with a lot of crack. This includes extreme variants of pre-existing power-ups that apparently weren't extreme enough already. This is not a replacement for the main game, but it comes with extra multiplayer options, along with new game modes that limit the power-up pool. Still, it's not enough, and way too many things are changed. The mod pulls a classic, throw more grip at the problem, likely in a failed attempt at mitigating the unresponsive steering. The steering rails are actually baked into the cars, but changing some of them does nothing. Technically, the multiplayer holds up and even exceeds modern day standards, but structurally, it remains greatly incomplete. Even then, I couldn't find enough people to fully experience it. I spent about 100 more hours in Crash Day after making a video on it. That video is now incredibly mid by my own standards, but that's not what I'm playing the game for. Despite being ancient, Crash Day's multiplayer still offers something that nothing else does. Its community of less than 100 people is still updating mods that greatly expand and improve the multiplayer. They host lobbies from time to time. For Max Damage, however, there's no such thing. And the max lobby size is 6 anyway. I've only scratched the surface of Max Damage. Others at the time didn't do even that. It was both praised and dismissed as a mere nostalgia trip, but it's much more than that. Max Damage remains a highly flawed game, but it also brought real improvements that went unnoticed by the public. Maybe it's because those improvements were obscured by those flaws. Maybe the franchise's misleading reputation distracted from it. Or maybe they only existed under the hood and people took them for granted. Sadly, the Karma IP is in the wrong hands today. By buying Max Damage directly, you'd be supporting the people who killed the franchise. The keys, on the other hand, are currently cheaper than the game's on-sale price. In fact, I'm going to hide 20 of them all throughout this video. And that was every Carmageddon game. No, I didn't miss any. TDR 2000, made by a different studio, was basically disowned by the original creators. They're not entirely innocent either, they made a drag game. They then sold the Karma IP to Shill Nordic, which is a part of Embracer, who whored the IP out to Vibeouts, who then made Carmageddon... let's give it a proper name. Following up from Max Damage / Reincarnation, this one should have been accordingly called Brain Damage or Retardation. Because that's what it is. Instead, it was called Rogue Shift. I was initially going to skip Rogue Shift and jump straight into its questionable marketing, but then I got criticized.
However, he refunded the game 2 hours in, which is not enough time to get the proper experience.
That's so funny coming from someone who was sent a Shill key, but he's ultimately right. The core driving was so colossally fucked up that I didn't bother playing past the 2-hour refund timer. We live in an era where a monkey can download a ready-made vehicle asset and make a game with generic but serviceable driving. Why is Rogue Shift such a mess then? This can't be excused with lack of feedback or playtesters, this is a dumpster fire! From the initial trailer, we can loosely tell that the game was first supposed to have break-to-drift driving, with camera movements reminiscent of Hot Wheels Unleashed. The game release says, it's not break-to-drift, but it does indeed feel like it was based on Unleashed. There are references to 2 other vehicle systems in the game files. I don't know what exactly to make of this, but it's clear that these people had absolutely no clue what to do for the most important part of their game. It's the first thing they ended up updating post-launch, but the only real improvement is being able to manually unfuck the steering rate yourself. And only the turn rate, return remains constant. But let's ignore the core driving. It's so shallow and effortless anyway, with all the banked corners and excessive rubber banding. I can stop for 20 seconds and still catch back up in another 30. It doesn't matter. Rogue is still Shift. Physical combat only consists of infinitely spammable side attacks. This move not only gives you free speed, free cornering, free takedowns, it also dodges lock-ons. Most weapons come down to waiting for the auto-lock and pressing a button. The only thing you really have to manage is the damage bar. As a Carmageddon, Rogue Shift is an insult. As a standalone game, it isn't much better. The people behind Karma meant business. They had separate credits for the car physics guy. The company's CEO wrote the damage model. They built a new framework from the ground up. Rogue people, on the other hand, can't even decide on which pre-made physics asset to use. They put more people on visuals and less on programming. A few devs went as far as to mention Karma in the credits. Achievement unlocked, make Karma. I can't believe we got to make a Karma game. These read like insults. But what people are decriing this game for is the roguelike career. They see it as something unique. I see it as dragging out what little content this game offers for as long as possible. You do get a different set of events each run, but they're all from a very limited pool of tracks and boss events. Every time you lose or finish, you start over from a new set, but earn currency that can be spent on permanent upgrades. You get stronger cards and weapons the more you play, as you would with many other racing games out there. Hell, iRacing has randomized perks. Does that make it an entirely unique racing game? No, it just has a different career structure. Same story here. People are glazing this game for what is essentially a fancy randomizer mod. Even if the campaign was something special, it wouldn't change or excuse the horrible gameplay underneath. I could shit on rogue shit for much longer, but I'd rather move over to a more important topic. Rogue shit becomes much more interesting when used as a case study. On the surface, Carmageddon Rogue Shift seems like a solid game and a huge step up over its predecessor. It scored nicely in reviews, YouTube is full of praises for it, and the user reviews... well, it got review bombed on launch, but the rating has continued to climb since then. Carmageddon Max Damage, on the other hand, reviewed poorly and was such a failure they sold the Carmageddon IP 2 years afterward. That's what you've been led to believe. In reality, Max Damage is far higher in quality, sold better than Rogue Shift, and has more players despite being a decade older. So why is that? Well, you don't need me to tell you that mainstream critics have been a complete joke for ages. It's been beaten to death at this point, so people have turned to alternatives, like niche specialists on YouTube or user ratings on storefronts. But these two are also unreliable, especially the former, because the majority of big creators are complete sellouts. Now I know, my everyone is wrong except me attitude has given me a negative, rage-baity reputation in the racing game space. But the difference is, I have something to back myself up. Let's do a simple experiment. Let's open up a fresh YouTube session with a US-based IP address and search Carmageddon Rogue Shift. Let's then write down every commentated video. These videos add up to nearly 1 million views. 81% of these views come from 12 videos, and all of them are paid sponsorships. There are people who got paid to make a video about the game. That should tell you more than enough, but sadly, I'll have to explain common sense. Some sponsorship contracts explicitly state that you can't make negative remarks about the product. Even if they don't, there's an unwritten rule. You don't buy the hand that feeds you. Or in the case of some, fund your extravagant hobbies. These videos aren't reviews, they're advertisements. That should be obvious, but for the majority, it isn't. People mistake these advertisements for genuine opinions. And I started realizing this because of how people reacted to a sponsorship I took. Gotta love praising a pay-to-win game from a guy who criticizes most racing games. Open video, whole segment is marked by sponsor block. Yes, and it should be. I literally say in the first sentence of the section that this is a sponsor. That's common sense. Why is it the top comment? I thought my negative aura may be contagious until I checked the comment section of these sponsored videos and realized the scale of the tragedy. Hell, people made memes about it being the only creator who didn't like Rogue Shift, not realizing that some of those who did were paid an estimated $50 per 1,000 views on their videos. That's the only real rate I know of. Here, let me fix that meme up for you. For fun, I fed the transcript of every video into a language model to give them a positivity rating. This won't be accurate, but still highlights the undeniable bias in sponsored content. These videos are completely useless if you're trying to evaluate the game. Yet, that's what 80% of people who watch narrated Rogue Shift videos were exposed to. And I believe this to be the main factor behind Rogue Shift's falsely perceived positive reception. But still, I also shouldn't have taken a sponsorship related to my niche, despite it being the norm. But the other 20% should be fine, right? Not quite. In addition to those who outright get paid real money, we have a second group of people who get a free review key, typically about a week ahead of the game's public release. Well, a free early copy is still a form of payment. You're no longer obligated to stay positive, but it will inevitably shift your bias. You'll view a product differently if you got a free special version of it ahead of everyone else, versus if you bought it with your hard-earned money. Did a single early reviewer mention Screamer's AAA asking price? Not to mention that some creators intentionally make overly positive videos in order to stay on the good side of companies who might eventually sponsor them. Am I throwing shade without hard evidence this time? Yes. Should you still, at best, take review copy videos with a huge grain of salt? Absolutely. Now, what about the final 5% of views? This is what you should have been presented with in the first place. Still, you might come across a lot of conflicting videos. On one hand you have people who last played a good racing game 20 years ago and have no frame of reference, and on the other hand you have me who only plays racing games and has exceptionally high standards as a result. But if you average them out, you should reach a general consensus. That's why checking multiple reviews is seen as one of the most reliable ways to evaluate the product before purchase. Well, if you're gonna do that, why waste time with YouTube videos when you can check user ratings on storefronts? You can't trust those either, not when literal shovelware is sitting at very positive. Steam reviews at least are heavily swayed by numerous unrelated factors such as trolls, fanboys, review bombs, nostalgia baits, high expectations not being met, people going way too easy on indie and early access games, praising a game for being bug-free and optimized when that should be the standard, and in general, not knowing what the fuck they're talking about. But why even look for reviews? This is a digital product. Extended demo versions aside, Steam lets you refund games if you have less than 2 hours of playtime. The only thing you'll be investing is your time. Let's say you buy Carmageddon Rogue Shift, and you actually like it? Yeah, fuck everyone else. All that matters is that you are having fun, right? Not if you ask me. Simply having fun is irrelevant. The degree to which you're having fun is what actually matters. Have you ever considered that there might be something better out there than what you're used to? You can have fun with this, and you can also have fun with this. And I know you would have, at some point in your life, like when first discovering video games. Now, which one of these fun games would you rather play? You probably couldn't answer that before, because you weren't aware of the existence of the first game. Well, now you are. So tell me, why settle for mediocrity when you could be fun maxing at a lower price? Tell me, Rogue Shit fans, if your game is so fun and addictive, why aren't you playing it? Why is your game as dead as Max Damage? That's right, just 2 months after the release, and there are about the same or even more people playing a dead, disappointing at the time Carmageddon than they are playing Rogue Shift. We've seen similar stories before. People praised Wreckfest 2's disastrous early access launch, not having played the gem that was Wreckfest 1. They fanboyishly supported AC Evo, only to be betrayed by its developer. They liked iRecycling Arcade, not knowing Circus Superstars was abandoned in favor of it. And it's still a more complete game. In all cases, the marketing and YouTube shells misled you towards the inferior product when a better, cheaper alternative of the same type already existed. The newer games might eventually redeem themselves, but that won't be without cost. The player-based split introduced by Wreckfest 2 depopulated the first game's lobbies, and we shall never see what else would have come out of iRecycling's predecessors. I bet everything that if people tried both games, the majority would choose Max Damage over Rogue Shift. Player count isn't everything, but it says a lot. Like how Rogue Shift wasn't exactly a successful game. Despite the larger gaming market today, Rogue Shift sold fewer copies than Max Damage or Reincarnation on Steam. The only thing it has going for it is a Nintendo launch that Max Damage didn't have.